Go on. Hey, good morning. I mean, good evening. Go on.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag?
Yeah.
After that, would you remain standing, and for a moment of silence, I will ask Mr. Daffis to describe that.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing.
Please join us in a moment of silence as we're gathered here by Maplewood's finest. We want to honor one of New Jersey's finest, dearly departed Penny Nesson. Penny Nesson is survived by her spouse of 20 years, life partner of over 23 years, Sue Fulton. Sue Fulton made history in the country, not just in New Jersey, by being the first out proud LGBT member of West Point Academy. And she and Penny celebrated their wedding there on a historic occasion at the West Point Cadet Church. Sue and Penny frequented Maplewood many times. They loved our town. They were here with us, with our local activists on our streets, here on town hall steps, in various rallies that we did on behalf of marriage equality and other LGBTQ advocacy. So we want to honor her with a moment of silence, and we thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2019 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2018, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams. Here. Mr. Daffis.
Here.
Mr. Lembrick.
Here. Good night, CC.
Mr. McGehee.
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, and whereas desire the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations on the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our February 19th meeting of the Township Committee. I'm going to run through the agenda real quick. First, we have a proclamation that Mr. McGehee will be issuing for Kai Struthers on his achievement, his bowling achievement, and you'll hear more about that in just a moment. We have a appointment process here. We're going to be appointing 3 people to various boards. After that, we'll have our first public comment period. If there's anyone who would like to address the Township Committee, you can come up to the microphone and give us your name and your address and share your views with us. And then we will have our Fire Department Awards presentation. After that, we will move on to an ordinance on final passage dealing with revising some parking times in Maplewood Village. Then we have another ordinance on final passage, which is the redevelopment plan for 104 Baker Street. If you're here for that, we will not be acting on that today because the planning board meeting was scheduled for last week and was canceled due to the snow. We cannot act unless we have a a review by the planning board before before we can take action. If you would like to speak on that, though, we will ask you to come up and speak on the 104 Baker Street. We will table it until March 19th. We have another ordinance on final that was implementing some parking changes on North and South Crescent. And we'll be introducing an ordinance to prohibit parking where we have the electric vehicle charging station. We have another ordinance, and this is the plastic bag, paper bag ordinance. If you're here to speak about that, the appropriate time is during the first public comment period. After that ordinance, we have 8 discussion items. We'll be talking about expanding the appropriate authority for the police department, talking about some local alcoholic beverage control restrictions. We'll be considering an exception for alcohol to be served at 106 Burnett. We'll be talking about the community board on police and its composition, the SOMA treasure hunt. We'll be talking about safe rides, a reorganization of the finance department, and an updating of the welcoming resolution for Maplewood and the related police department operational order. We have 3 items on the consent agenda: a resolution of bills and claims, and then we have approval of the open and closed meeting minutes for February 5th. We'll have our second public comment period. We have administrative reports and reports from elected officials. So that's our rundown. You can stay for as long or as little as you'd like. I'm sure most of you are here for the fire department awards, and we will get to those in just a moment. First, though, I'm going to ask Deputy Mayor McGehee if he will go down to the microphone and invite our guests to come on up and bowl a few frames.
Kai Struthers and family, please approach.
You can go right over there.
I have a proclamation to read on behalf of the Township Committee of Maplewood, recognizing Kai Struthers of Maplewood for successfully bowling a perfect game in a competition. Whereas about 70 million people in the United States bowl at least one game each year, and nearly 50 million at least twice a year. And whereas statistically, the chances of bowling a perfect game are 11,500 to 1 for the average bowler, 5,000 to 1 for a low handicapper, and 3,000 to 1 for a tour player. And whereas, according to the U.S. Bowling Congress, only one other person younger in United States history at the age of 9 years, 6 months, and 19 days has bowled a perfect game. And whereas Kai Struthers is the youngest person ever in the state of New Jersey and the second 10-year-old in United States history to bowl a 300 game in a competition. And whereas the news of Kai's accomplishments resulted in recognition on a national level in media markets through New York, Atlanta, and greater New Jersey, Kai Struthers is recognized and congratulated for successfully bowling a perfect game in a competition. Therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee and Mayor Vic DeLuca that today is Kai Struthers Day.
Thank you, everybody, for congratulating me on my perfect game because it is my day.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. And you almost did it again 2 days ago.
That's great. Almost did it again.
I'll be here every week.
I want to invite you.
Okay, now we have a couple of, or a few appointments to boards and committees. The first is Environmental Advisory Committee, Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to invite Jacob Caden to come up to the microphone and introduce yourself. Jake came to our last Environmental Advisory Committee, and I'd ask you to fix the mic and and then tell the Township Committee a little bit about yourself.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Tough act to follow there.
Yeah.
My name is Jake Caden. My wife and I moved to Maplewood about 1.5 years ago, and we've loved being members of the community
Welcome.
since. Thank you. Environmental and sustainability issues have always been a large part of my life, both professionally and personally. And I think some of the greatest impacts we can make are on the local level. And so it'd be my honor to serve as part of the Environmental Advisory Board as a member to help try and make Maplewood just that much better of a place.
Great.
Thank you. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to allow Mr. Caden to join our Environmental Advisory Committee. He's already had a conversation, he and I, and he's already shown that he'll be a large asset to the committee. So I'd like to make a motion, we appoint.
I'll second that.
Let's go to roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor McGehee, we have some appointments to the Board of Adjustment.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll invite up both of them at the same time, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mr. Irving Cham and Mr. Damon Titus, would you please approach? Both these gentlemen are Maplewood residents. They've been residents for some time. They're very active in their respective churches and organizations. I won't tell everyone what they do because I could read what their bios, but I think it'd be in fairness to let you, introduce yourself to the committee as well as to the public and let them know why you're going to be a great asset to the organization.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Damian Titus. I have lived in Maplewood for a little bit over 18 years. My wife and I moved here with our first son. As of today, we have 3 boys, one 20, one 14, and the other one 9. I live off of Hudson Avenue in the Clinton District, Clinton Elementary and Columbia High School. I work for the City of New York at the Department of Buildings as an architect. I am a plan reviewer, zoning reviewer. So basically, I'm coming into a system that I can probably apply my knowledge so I can help out the Township of Maplewood and make it a much better community. I hope you guys welcome me, and I will do a great job for you guys as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, that's a tough act to follow. Good evening, everyone. My name is Irving Cham. I've lived here since I was 14. I live on Boyden Avenue. I currently work in Maplewood, live in Maplewood. I'm a real estate agent, and it'll be my pleasure to serve on this board, and I know that I'll be able to give some input as much as I can whenever you guys need me. I'll be there, and I look forward to working with you and Mr. Titus and everyone else here to make Maplewood better and keep going towards the direction that we're going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nominate separately?
You can do them both.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a nomination for Irving Cham and Damon Titus at this time.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
And now, again, we're going to have our first public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? I would like to welcome Jason Martinez from Essex County. If you want to come on up and say a few words, we'll put you on the spot. We'll give you a list of things you can take back to the county executive. Our previous liaison retired, so we wish her well. She came and made a promise at every meeting and delivered. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but you can make a promise and deliver.
No promises.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right.
Good evening, Township of Maplewood. Good evening, Mayor, Councilmen. My name is Jason Martinez. I will, like the mayor said, I'll be taking over someone who made a lot of promises, and I'm hoping that that the county and the Township of Maplewood could work things out on whatever you guys need. I'm here to help. Please don't beat me up so much. And, thank you for this opportunity. And I'm here to help on behalf of the county executive. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else like to speak to the Township Committee at this point? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Dean Nielsen, and I'm here representing two groups in Maplewood, the Social Justice, the Soma Justice Committee, and Soma Action, particularly the Climate Committee. In fact, I'm standing in for my wife, Jennifer, who's out of town. I have here a letter that is composed or constructed by these two organizations about the plastic bag ordinance that we're considering again tonight. And the letter is actually very supportive and very much endorsing the version that we've seen so far. The letter goes on for about a page and a half, which is not too long, with a few ideas about the implementation of this ordinance, about some of the details with respect to, for example, the training and the education that's going to have to happen in the next few months, also about the equity issues of making sure that the elderly and those on, for example, the different income support programs have certain kinds of breaks. There's also something in here about how we can essentially take this on as an experiment that is to be carefully tracked and reported on in a few months in terms of what action has happened. And so we'd like to not spend time reading this letter in this meeting, but just table it today. And I'm not sure how I do that, but I think I hand the letter over here.
Yes, to the clerk.
Ms. Fritzen.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Thank you.
Okay, if not, we will close the first public comment session. There will be one later. I do see Chief of Staff Raji came in. You missed Jason. Would you like to come up and say hello? Mr. Martinez he made a bunch of promises. He said our CDBG dollars would be tripled and everything else. So thank you.
I was here to introduce him and to Phil Elijah, Chief of Staff, Essex County from Fairfield. I just want to commend Maplewood and the Town Council for doing a great job. On behalf of County Executive Joe DiVincenzo, one of the programs we initiated from day one was having an administrator, someone at the highest level of government. I'm proud of my friend Jason, who's just named the Director of Youth Services for the County of Essex. We have a liaison in every town. I serve as a liaison in Fairfield, where I live. And, we're happy and congratulate Jeanette Page Hawkins, who was here before, and I was going to introduce you to Jason, but I was late, so my apologies. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Elijah.
Okay, we are now going to move to item number 8, which is the Maplewood Fire Department Awards presentation. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Dingelstadt. You want to move the podium to face the folks. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening and welcome to the 2019 Maplewood Fire Department Awards Ceremony. I'd like to start really by thanking Mayor DeLuca and the Township Committee for allowing us to take a few minutes out of the Township meeting tonight to recognize several members who have distinguished themselves through their actions. Specifically, members who had significant contribution to building a training facility in the back of fire headquarters, members who were involved in a tragic accident and working on extricating people out of a head-on collision, members who performed CPR on somebody in cardiac arrest and were able to revive them on the way to the hospital, and a fire incident where we're going to be recognizing 2 of our members for assisting Maplewood police officers in removing 2 victims from a house fire on September 11th. And because Maplewood Fire Department's awards procedures doesn't have, we don't review actions of police officers. It's my understanding the Maplewood Police Department has their own policies and procedures regarding that. But before we move along into the awards, I would like to recognize Sergeant Jimmy DeFazio is here. I'd like to please stand up, and his officer, Rob here. Sergeant DeFazio and Officer Smith, Rob Smith, were 2 police officers who arrived on the scene of a house fire before the fire department got there and were in the process of helping remove victims that we've completed assisting with them. So I just wanted to have them be recognized because without their efforts, the circumstances would have probably not turned out the way they did. Now, our department awards are unique in that any member can submit another member for recognition. Then a merit review board comprising 2 deputy chiefs and a captain selected by the chief of the department, and 2 firefighters are selected by the FMBA president. They then review all the information related to incidents of members who were involved. If the actions of the members meet the criteria that the department has established, then the committee members will vote to determine the level of recognition that each member will receive. And I'd like to thank actually Captain Keith Addy, who was the chair of the Merit Review Board, through this, and he worked on putting together reviewing all the incidents with his committee. So I thank Captain Addy. Thank you for putting this together for tonight and the work that you and your committee did. Maplewood Fire Department consists of a group of extremely dedicated individuals, highly motivated professionals who are second to none. And I say that with a great deal of pride, and I say it without reservation to any other fire chiefs or if there's somebody from other departments that are here, because I mean that sincerely. We respond on a daily basis to every imaginable type of emergency. Some of them may be as simple as assisting somebody whose smoke detector was going off because the battery was getting low and we assist in replacing the battery, which doesn't sound like much of an emergency, but for the person that's happening to, it's real for them. Other times, we respond to a structure fire, we respond to a medical emergency and having to perform CPR on a patient. Sometimes the outcome is not what we hope for when we get there. If firefighters take everything in stride, and if someone told them they did something worthy of recognition, they would all humbly respond, "I'm just doing my job." But before I turn the podium over to Deputy Chief Mike Weber, who's going to be doing the narratives for the awards, I would like to ask all the Maplewood Fire Department members to please stand up here and be recognized because you certainly deserve your recognition. Okay, and I'd like to thank you and thank the members of the Maplewood Fire Department for the pride that they take in their work and the effort that they put into making Maplewood a safe place and providing the best possible fire and EMS services for the residents. I'd like to ask Deputy Chief Michael Weber to come up and continue with the presentations.
Okay. This first award is administrative award. There's 9 members involved. I'm going to call your names. You guys will come up, and I'll just explain what that's all about. Okay. Firefighter Salvatore Aliano. Firefighter Matthew Antolino. Firefighter Wayne Kroll. Firefighter William Davitt. Firefighter David Hoy. Firefighter Miguel Perez. Deputy Chief Richard Salkowski. Firefighter Alberto Sanchez. And firefighter Kenneth Yarusi. Okay, this administrative award is being presented to these gentlemen for constructing a training facility in the rear fire headquarters. Obviously, training is a critical part of our job, and it can be very difficult. Trying to get the crews together to be able to train together on site is a challenge. So these gentlemen took basically some shipping containers, stacked them, constructed facilities inside the containers, used their different skills, some welding skills, some carpentry skills. Now they're able to conduct confined space training, search and rescue, some roof operation trainings, bailout training, all different types of very valuable training on site, right in the back of our headquarters. So if an alarm comes in, they can break down and respond to the alarm. They have to go off site, and they're able to train together. So they did a great job. Let's congratulate Chief Ding's that's going to present these guys with awards. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Okay, the second award is a Union Citation Award, and I'm going to call your names again, guys. Please come up front here. Captain Keith Addy, Captain Chris Ariyama, Firefighter Steve Cassiello, Firefighter John Conklin, Firefighter Wayne Kroll, Firefighter Ciro Durso, Firefighter Angelo Fiorenzo, Firefighter Anthony Fortunato, and Firefighter Kenneth Yarusi. This award is for an incident that occurred on February 20th. It was a head-on collision between a garbage truck and a transit bus. Deputy 3, Engine 32, and Rider 31, and Rescue 37 responded to report a motor vehicle accident on Springfield Avenue near the New Jersey Transit Bus Garage. Engine 32 arrived on the scene. Captain Addy reported a head-on collision involving a New Jersey Transit bus and a garbage truck with multiple injuries. The driver of the empty bus was heavily entrapped behind the steering wheel and required extensive extrication. There were 4 workers on the garbage truck, a driver, a passenger, and 2 others in the rear step who all sustained serious injuries requiring treatment. Captain Addy, Firefighter Russi, and Firefighter Durso deployed the hydraulic tools off of Engine 32 and started to extricate the driver. The rescue efforts of all companies. Rescue 37 arrived on the scene. Firefighter Conklin and Firefighter Fortunato provided patient care for the bus driver and 4 workers on the garbage truck with the assistance of Captain Ariema. Rider 31 arrived on the scene. Firefighter Kroll, Fiorenza, and Cassiello deployed a second set of hydraulic tools and assisted with the extrication of the bus driver. Rescue 37 transported the driver of the bus, while additional EMS agencies transported the other 4 patients to University Hospital in Newark. All personnel responded displayed true professionalism under difficult and stressful conditions and worked as a cohesive unit. The members not only had to deal with the rescue of the heavily entrapped driver, but also had to provide triage, patient care, and delay, and with a delay of mutual aid EMS units. So I arrived on the scene also after this was all set up, and it's always a proud moment as a chief officer to arrive on the scene and everything was taken care of. They had a line charged because there were fluids to prevent, just in case there was a fire. They had multiple patients, and they had to triage these patients, see who was most critical. And they're all working together simultaneously, extricating the one victim was most critical, and the other victims were also in pretty bad shape. Again, all 4 tools were operating. They had stabilized and shocked both vehicles, so they weren't going to move. It was just impressive to arrive on the scene and know everything had done. Nothing could have been done any better with the manpower that we had. So I'd like to congratulate these guys on a job well done.
How is it?
Well done. This next award is a life-saving award and will be presented to firefighter William Davitt, firefighter David Hoy, firefighter Miguel Perez, and firefighter Alberto Sanchez for their actions performing CPR medical call on August 3rd, 2018. Come on up, guys. In a couple. All right. Rescue 37, Deputy 3, and Lab 31 responded at 10:50 a.m. to 2091 Milburn Avenue for the reported unconscious. Upon arrival, Rescue 37 personnel found a patient on the floor of a doctor's office with the medical staff performing CPR. The patient had no pulse, and firefighter Davitt, firefighter Hoy, firefighter Perez, and firefighter Sanchez took over patient care by performing CPR and delivering 2 shocks with the automatic external defibrillator. The patient regained a pulse and was transported by Rescue 37 and paramedics to Newark Bethesda Medical Center in Newark. Firefighter Sanchez assisted firefighter Davitt and firefighter Hoy with continued patient care during the transport to the hospital. The patient was responsive in the emergency room prior to the fire department personnel leaving the hospital. All personnel that responded displayed true professionalism and utilized their hours of EMS training to save the life of another human being. Without the quick decision-making and life-saving effort, the patient would not have survived. Again, the rapid response, being there very, very quickly and doing the right things right away saved the life, and it's one of the more rewarding things we face in the fire service. So congratulations, guys. Good job. Bye, guys. Next award is the Merit Award, and we presented to Captain Christopher Ariyama and firefighter Connell Hamilton for their actions performed at a house fire on September 11th, 2018. Come on, guys. Deputy 3, Engine 32, Engine 33, and Ladder 31 responded at 3:21 a.m. on September 11th to a fire at 10 Nelson Place. The report came as smoke coming from under a door. While responding, REMS received a second call reporting structure fire. Engine 32 arrived on the scene. Captain Ariyama reported an occupied 2-story wood frame, multiple dwelling with flames showing from the second floor of the Charlie Delta corner. While advancing initial hand line to the second floor, Captain Ariyama and firefighter Hamilton discovered Maplewood Police Sergeant James DeFazio and Officer Robert Smith attempting to remove an unresponsive victim from an apartment across the hall. Captain Ariyama and firefighter Hamilton kept their fire apartment door shut to prevent, the fire apartment door shut to prevent flames from entering the hallway, dropped the hand line and assisted Sergeant DeFazio and Officer Smith in removing the victim down the stairs to the exterior. Once the victim was removed from the structure, Captain Ariyama and firefighter Hamilton re-entered the structure and advanced the hand line into the fire apartment where they encountered heavy fire conditions. The intense flames were extinguished quickly, which prevented fire extension to the other apartments. Captain Ariyama and firefighter Hamilton displayed true professionalism and utilized their many hours of training and years of experience to have the presence of mind to make a difficult decision to hold the fire in check by keeping the door closed, abandon suppression efforts, and save the life of another human being. Once again, those times in your career were very, very proud moments. And about 6 weeks after this fire, I was working, the guys were out on an alarm, and the door rang downstairs at fire headquarters. I went down and answered the door, and a woman came running at me, crying, hugged me, and thanking me. And I'm like, I really didn't know what it was all about until she explained that she was a victim that had been removed from that fire. And again, I was at the fire. After all that was done, she was off to the hospital. Guys did an outstanding job. Very, very proud moment for our department. And well done, guys. Congratulations.
This last award is a civilian award, and Captain Keith Addy is going to present this one.
Okay, I would like to invite Maplewood Township resident Jamie Skiles and his wife Amy. A couple of years ago, we had an incident at their home. We were able to mitigate the problem before it escalated. And we got to talking with them, and we noticed that he appeared to be a graphic designer. So by his art, we were intrigued by it. So we, at the time, we were about to get a new fire engine, which is stationed down at Station 2 at the corner of Springfield and Boyden. And we were looking to have some kind of company pride where we were going to get some unique emblem to put on that engine to display what we are. So we got into talking, and Jamie wound up offering us his talents for coming up with a design, and it was fabulous. So we had a proud moment once we had the new engine come in. It's displayed on each side of the engine. It kind of defines, you know, who we are. It has engine 32 on there. We're called the Deuce. All right, and he came up with a very nice design. So in recognition of that, and also along the way, we've become friends. And, you know, we talk frequently, you know, through social media and texting. So it's an honor for me to present Jamie Skiles with a crystal It's a crystal that has the engine 32 emblem on it. So it says, presented to Jamie Skiles in recognition of creation for Maplewood Engine 32, Maplewood Fire Department.
This is the first time I've ever been in this room where I get to talk. But I just wanted to say I'm very humbled and grateful. But really, I think everybody will agree with me. These guys are the real heroes. And I'd just like to give a round of applause for everything you do for us. Do I take it or leave it?
You take it.
Okay.
It is yours.
Thank you. There you go.
We're gonna get a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's display that thing. Yeah, let's look at it.
I don't want to get my fingerprints on it.
Thank you.
Maybe leave it in the.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna get started. We are going to get started. Before we get to item 9, I just want to clarify the appointments. Mr. Titus is being appointed to a full member of the Board of Adjustment, and Mr. Chom is being appointed as alternate number 2. Are we on number 9, ordinance on final passage?
Mayor, item number 9, ordinance number 2941-19, an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will revise parking time limits within the Township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this ordinance dealing with parking regulations? Seeing no one, will close the hearing and get a motion. Ms. Adams.
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a past ordinance in the Maplewood News Record, Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Ordinance.
Item number 10, Mayor, also on final passage, ordinance number 2943-19.
No, we're skipping.
No, we have to do it.
No, we
Oh.
have to do it.
We have to
It's on the
vote.
agenda, so we have to do it.
Oh, gotcha.
An ordinance
Go ahead.
adopting a redevelopment plan for the 104 Baker Street. This ordinance will adopt a redevelopment plan for the site at 104 Baker Street.
Mr. Desiderio, do you want to explain what's going on?
Yeah, this ordinance was introduced at the last meeting, and it then was referred to the planning board pursuant to statute for their review and approval with regard to the master plan. That meeting should have been held last week on the 12th. It was canceled because of the weather. So it's my recommendation that you table this and carry it to March the 19th, which is 2 meetings from tonight, because the next meeting of March the 5th will not be sufficient. The next planning board meeting is on March the 12th. So it should be carried to March the 19th.
Right. The only thing I want to do is, if anyone came for this ordinance, I want to give them an opportunity to speak on it, since you didn't know what was going on. So if there's anyone who wants to speak on the redevelopment plan at 104 Baker Street, this would be the time now to speak.
Greco. My father has owned the property right across the street at 101 Baker Street for 72 years. So we've been through a lot. We've seen on Highland Place in the 70s when they took two houses down and they put the condominiums up, which backed right up to our property line. Last year, they completed development of 97 Baker, where they put on the second floor of the 3 apartments, and that really blocked a lot of our sunlight. So I guess my concern is hearing that the 3-story building going up across the street, does it really begin to box us in a way? So I'm not sure what that looks like. I mean, I have no opposition to any kind of redevelopment. I think it's good for the neighborhood, but are we going too far with making a 3-story facility in that location? And then I'm curious, how far is it going to come up to the sidewalk?
Yes.
Like how far back is it going to be set?
It won't be set back. It'll come up to the sidewalk.
Okay. And then finally, we have trouble backing out of our driveway a lot, so I'm also concerned about where the driveway is going in and out for traffic there. So that would just be a consideration for myself and then our neighbors next door, because we have trouble getting out today, and people use our driveways as a turnaround too.
So this ordinance, when we get it into the shape that we're going to vote on it, just sets the zoning for it, the actual plan as to where the driveway will be. That would be done in the site plan reviewed by the planning board.
Okay.
That's going to come some future time once the developers design the building and decide what it's going to look like. So there'll be opportunity for you, and because the Maplewood Village Alliance will also be looking at that, so their design review committee will have open meetings. You can go to those, see what's being talked about, share your concerns with them. As far as the 3 stories, the underlying zone there is 50 feet, so 3 stories are allowed.
Okay.
Actually, 4 stories are allowed, because if you could get it under 50 feet, you could do it. So this actually talks about a 37-foot building. So It's one floor of retail and parking and 2 floors of residential, so.
It's just hard for me to envision it there. You know,
Yeah.
I've been there, you know, I grew up in the
Yep.
70s, and
Yeah.
I just know it as a certain Exxon station and
Right,
a service
right.
station. All right. And then just one other consideration. Again, I don't know what time it's a good time to vet this concern. When they were doing 97 Baker, a lot of the businesses lost a lot of business because of the construction vehicles closing Baker Street and not having enough spaces for, you know, regular shopping. So I'm wondering if the, you know, day after Thanksgiving till, let's say, the end of the Christmas season, could there be anything what we could work out with the construction vehicles of maybe taking a break from parking where they're parking or doing something else inside the building as opposed to taking up all that prime space during prime opportunities for the businesses to make money?
So once this gets approved and plans are submitted for building, there'll be a construction meeting, and all that will be talked about. What happened at 97 Baker Street was, let me put it charitably, the contractor took a lot of liberties that weren't allowed.
You put dirt in front of one of our.
He did a lot of different things
Yeah.
that we didn't, we had to follow him up. So we learned from that, and we will monitor that better. And that will come out primarily in the construction meeting, before a pre-construction meeting, and then certainly during it, we can monitor it. If, it's hard to tell when construction will take place, whether there'll even be construction this year. Because by the time this gets done, they have to do demolition. It's possible they could do some structural, the outside skin of the building, and then do inside. A lot also matters if they can get the parking, and they can park inside too, if they can get that first floor done. So these are conversations we can have when the developer is selected, and there's a building that we know what they're planning to put up there.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyone else want to speak on this ordinance? Okay, so because the planning board hasn't heard this, I would ask Ms. Adams if she would make a motion to table this until March 19th.
Mayor, I make a motion that we table this ordinance for on second reading until planning board has a chance to review and make their recommendations.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that, but I do have a question.
Okay.
And that is, and it's really just a chronology question. We're not yet to the point where the Maplewood Village Alliance is considering anything, right?
Correct.
Okay, so, you know, anything about the design, the demolition of the current structure, any of those things that are provided for aren't going to happen until after we approve the redevelopment plan?
Correct.
Okay. That takes care of my concern. Yeah, so I second.
Just on this, we'll re-advertise and we'll have another public hearing, so. Okay, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. We have another ordinance on final.
Mr. Mayor, item number 11, ordinance number 2944-19. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance implements certain changes to parking regulations on North Crescent and South Crescent within the Township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone to speak on this ordinance dealing with parking, restricted parking on South and North Crescents? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and Ms. Adams, can we get a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Item 12, Mayor, on introduction, ordinance number 2945-19 is an ordinance to prohibit parking in designated spaces. This ordinance will prohibit the parking of motor vehicles in designated electric vehicle charging parking spaces, except when an electric vehicle is in the process of charging.
Ms. Adams, can you introduce this and also speak to it?
Sure. Mayor, this ordinance is for, we installed, as everyone knows, 2 electric charging stations in the parking lot by the Woodland. Those parking spaces are strictly for electric vehicles, but because we had no ordinance, the police were not able to enforce when a gas-powered vehicle was taking up those parking spaces. There will be time limits and hours, and they'll all be posted at the space. So with my colleagues' support, I move the passage of this ordinance on its first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 5th.
Second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Limbrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Item 13 is an ordinance on introduction.
Mr. Mayor, that's ordinance number 2946-19. It's an ordinance to prohibit the use of plastic bags and regulate the use of plastic bags by retail establishments.
Paper bags.
Paper bags, I'm sorry, within the Township of Maplewood. This ordinance, the purpose of this ordinance is to reduce the use of disposable paper and plastic non-reusable checkout bags by retail establishments in the Township of Maplewood.
We get a motion?
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on March 5th.
Second. Discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Limbrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, we have 8 discussion items. We're on item number 14 on the agenda. The first is expanding appropriate authority to include a member of the governing body. This is the appropriate authority for the police department. Mr. Limbrick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that I know I've been talking about and I've discussed with many of my colleagues up here and many in the community over the past few years. This really is something that I think is a move that is good for government overall, but particularly in light of the increased public scrutiny and interest in our police department in the past few years, especially surrounding the incident of July 5, 2016. I think for the purposes of transparency with the governing body, accountability, and oversight, that having an elected official, at least one elected official, be part of the appropriate authority along with the township administrator would be a good step in ensuring that someone who is elected by and accountable to, directly accountable to the public would have insight into the promulgation of those rules and procedures and also be briefed on those internal issues and wanted to get a sort of a sense of the Township Committee, a feel from my colleagues up here of whether they thought that was a good idea. We received a memo from, not from Mr. Desiderio, but at the behest of Mr. Desiderio from outside counsel. I thought that the question outside counsel answered was slightly different than the one I was asking, but was still useful in terms of guidance. But just wanted to, before I made any sort of formal proposal for an ordinance, wanted to get a sense from my colleagues of whether you thought this was a good idea.
Could you explain why you think we need this for the police department? I mean, essentially, the administrator is the appropriate authority for every department. Why the police department and not other departments?
Well, I mean, I think that the role of appropriate authority is a little bit different with respect to the police department in terms of dealing with, and Ms. Averos or you, Mr. Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of dealing with information that is not currently disclosed or available to the Township Committee. And I think that there's a lot of public interest and public concern in the operations of the police department that I just don't think we see the same level of public concern with respect to other departments.
And what information in particular are you, I'm unclear about the information that you're looking to get shared with the Township Committee. There are grievances, for example, the administrator is the first step in the grievance procedure, whether it be DPW, the fire department, the police department. There's the same situation. Those grievances go to the administrator. We don't necessarily get those until there's an appeal to us, because there's also a step process where it goes to the administrator first and then it comes to us. So I'm not sure, could you be more specific about the kind of information you're looking for?
Sure. It might be helpful. Ms. Viveros, maybe you could describe as appropriate authority for the police department how, in your experience, that's different from your role as administrator for other departments.
As far as the procedure and any grievances, personnel matters, it's all at the same type of levels in terms of how I deal with it and how I receive them. So I'm just trying to, I guess it goes the same thing with fire. So
you're saying there is no difference, or there is a difference?
There, in terms of the process and the grievance process, they're all different in their own aspect, but essentially all treated in, all come to me.
So is there a difference in, I understand that the nature of the grievances are different, but you're the appropriate authority for the fire department?
Correct.
For the DPW?
Correct.
You're the first line for grievances?
It's the department head first.
Okay, and then you, and that's
And then me.
in all those departments, including the police?
Correct.
Okay, and then as far as if a department head has an issue that needs some guidance from you, is it equal? Do they all come to you and say, I need some guidance from you about a particular issue, whether it be personnel, budget, anything like that?
Yes.
Is there anything that you get from the police, for example, when there's, in the middle of the night, when there is an incident? Do you get a call?
I get every call.
You get a call from the fire department when there's a fire?
Yes.
You get a call from the DPW if there's a kind of an emergency, whether there's a water leak, a cave-in, or something like that?
Any type of emergency, yes.
So it's similar in all those different departments?
Yes, all across the board.
Okay. And what is your role in terms of internal affairs, or, when there's an issue with an officer? Says, such as, had you been the appropriate authority at the time, and I think at the time you were assistant township administrator, with respect to the investigation of July 5th, 2016, for example?
From my understanding, having dealt a little bit with that, the internal affairs part is treated separately from what I would have to deal with. I'm privy to what goes on pretty much, but in terms of like what sort of, I guess, actions need to be taken upon individual officers, that's all part of the internal affairs. And then obviously, once the county takes over, we all wash our hands of it at some point. So.
Sorry, is it once what takes over?
Once the county comes in.
Oh, in terms of the prosecutor's office?
Right.
Okay. In terms of overseeing the internal affairs process, is that something that you play a role in?
Yes.
And
how so?
Yeah.
In terms of if there's any sort of getting updates, what stage they are in terms of.
Okay, so you don't play a role, you get information.
I get information, let's just say, yes.
And Mr. Mayor, one of the frustrations that I know that I had, particularly in that situation, was public. The public elected officials were getting a lot of questions that weren't even necessarily specific, but were more procedural and where are we at? That we didn't have that information, and it was a process that. The speed of the process and the procedural steps in the process, I don't think were clear to the elected officials. And maybe there's another way to address this than to have one of us be part of the appropriate authority, and maybe that's a discussion that we can have to sort of pinpoint the issue. And if Ms. Viveros or Mr. Desiderio would have suggestions as to how we might be able to do that, or whether we can't do that, I'd welcome that.
And we certainly can, Mr. Lindberg. And I understand your position, but I think the question, at least in my mind, as you just said, what you said is that if a member of the elected, of the governing body is appropriate authority, I think they would be bound by the same restrictions that the appropriate authority is bound by. So I don't believe if Mr. McGehee, say, were there, he would be able to share that information with the public or with any of you. If the restriction is applicable, it's going to be applicable to whomever is the appropriate authority. So I'm not sure that that what you're suggesting is a problem, that this is a solution to that problem.
That may be the case.
That's my thinking as we do, because if the information is available to the appropriate authority to disseminate, it's been my experience over the years that the administrator always shares the information with the governing body to the extent that they're permitted to do so. So if the appropriate authority is someone other than the administrator, I think they're going to be bound by the same restriction.
Okay. And Ms. Viveros, without getting into obviously the details of things that you might have to keep confidential, could you maybe describe the type of information that you would get as appropriate authority that you would not be able to share with the Township Committee, with the elected officials?
I don't think there's not a whole lot in terms of we couldn't discuss as far as situational and in terms of not getting so much into the personnel matter of it until something's resolved out, obviously. So I think we could
I think it would be just the personnel, not the incident, that would clearly be available, but the fact that there might be an internal affairs investigation against Officer A, B, or C, I think is the information that would not be available. Okay, so I like to think that the July 5th, 2016 incident was just an anomaly, okay?
We all would.
Okay, and it won't happen, and it was just clearly a breakdown, not from the administrator's office, but elsewhere. But, you know, I don't think that otherwise happens. And my sense is that there is good communication, clearly with this chief. So I think the only restriction is that issue with regard to personnel, and I'm not sure that that's going to be available to the public until, well, actually never, now that I think about it. So.
Okay, well then there may be, to the extent we can address my concerns, there may be other ways or better ways to go about it than this. So I take that, you know, and obviously if anyone else has anything to say, but I think that, you know, I probably would want to go back and do some more thinking about this before making a formal proposal to move forward with any type of change.
I would just, almost in the abstract, if we could get, I think the frustration the last time during that was that we didn't even know what we were supposed to know, and then we were getting demands of like, who is it and why haven't they been fired and all those things.
And we lost 9 months with the prosecutor.
Right,
I mean, that was the crazy part.
yeah, I know. The prosecutor's office did not help at all, at least as far as that goes. But maybe whatever information you can share with us, you know, like you do sometimes, and the chief does sometimes, confidential, not for release, or, you know, basic information without divulging personnel stuff would just be something policy-wise we could.
And I think I'd just like to add one thing that came out of that event was that the internal controls within the police department, the reorganization of the police department there's a lot more, I guess, would be oversight on certain aspects of reporting of events and things, you know, and obviously with the Community Service Bureau, that's been a really huge help to sort of give that transparency part of what we're doing here. So I think we're going in the right direction. And whatever we can release to the Township Committee that we would feel necessary, I think that absolutely out of question. And I would be in favor of that. So.
Right, it's good to hear. I think the process was a little bit flawed in terms of before I on the TC, when I was on the TC, about what we could and could not listen to or hear. And I think Mr. Lindberg's bringing up a good point. I think we can find a way to address this. So in the words of transparency, there's more, because as elected officials, we have an obligation to the public. And I think that what Mr. Limbrick is saying, and Ms. Adams and Mayor DeLuca as well, essentially were there for the bulk of July 5, 2016, was that they didn't have that, they were not empowered to do their public duty. So I would be in favor of some type of process, maybe not necessarily what we're talking about today. And I do think that the document that came from Genoma Burns, what makes me think about is that it says that, decisions could be tainted by public sentiments. So that was duly noted too. So I think finding something that aligns with what you're trying to get done, which makes a lot of sense, would be the right course of direction.
Right. And I do take the point made by, or at least hinted at by Ms. Desiderio and Ms. Viveros, which is that, to some extent it wasn't necessarily the process, it was the personnel, and we've had improvements in that area. And I think we have found, more sort of transparency and better information sharing of late than we had a few years ago. And, I guess the one thing that maybe I would add is sort of, to the extent that there's information that, that we can't be given, that we at least be told, legally, you cannot have this information, because, that's one of the things, as Ms. Adams mentioned before, that, I think we took a fair bit of heat for, in part because we didn't ourselves, it was new territory for us, from the public, who said, you oversee, the budget, you oversee these departments, particularly for those of us who were on the Public Safety Committee at the time, you're on this committee, and how come you don't have this information? We obviously can't overcome the law and the prohibitions and such, but at least if we can know what we can know and know what we can't know, and then we can be better able to communicate to the public, even if it's not necessarily all the information they'd like or the information they want to hear. At least we can be confident that we're telling the public what we can, and also to the extent that the public can't know something, that we know that too, and we can better handle it going forward. And obviously, as Mr. Desiderio said, I share the hope that there won't be an incident that will be as deserving and as provoking of public concern and interest as July 5. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Daffis, local ABC restriction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This comes to our consideration from our local municipal alliance and their work in alcohol and drug abuse prevention, and of course, using our local ABC hat. So the ADAPT team from Essex County, under the direction of the New Jersey Beverage Licensing Association, has been reaching out to municipalities to ask them to consider required alcohol management training by liquor consumption establishments and by caterers. This is provided by ADAPT itself. It's free, it's a 4-hour training, and the idea here is to go beyond just illegal consumption of by minors. This is not teaching basically how to check IDs. Most of our establishments already do that. This is more about how to deal with situations concerning overassumption or overconsumption or overservice by adults, public safety incidents of disorderly conduct, stopping people from driving, so it's a public safety concern, and raising awareness on the issue generally, because we know that in most of our establishments, a lot of the servers can be seasonal, and they rotate and may not be as adept to these concerns. So again, this came to our consideration from the Municipal Alliance. There is at least one municipality outside of Essex County that has added this as an annual requirement for certification. The training could be done once and certified biannually, so it wouldn't be required every year. The training is free. up to 30 participants per training period. They could do them first time in the morning. They can accommodate the establishments as necessary. And that's what I have. I'll take your questions.
Where do they hold these trainings?
They can hold them wherever works for the municipality. It could be at the Woodland and invite everybody to come in. It could be at the establishment. An establishment can host other establishments as well. So they could be anywhere.
So is there a train the trainer part of this, or is it a directly trainer to train?
Come again?
Is there, how you get train the trainer? Let's say I have an establishment, I get the training, I train the 4 of you, my bartenders. Or is it every individual has to be trained?
The establishment can invite all of their employees, or they can, as available, or they can pass it on to their employees after the leads have been trained.
So it's trained, got you, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Fritzen, could I, what kind of requirements are there right now? Is there any such requirement, or any type of training required?
Not by the Maplewood local ABC? No.
What about getting licensed by the state? No?
But we have the jurisdiction locally to apply whatever requirements.
Well, you have certainly a lot of leverage at every renewal, every June, that if you decide, for example, some things that we have required licensees to post signs at their cash registers about, for example, straws, cups, that kind of thing.
The answer, Mr. Daffis, is yes.
Okay, just checking.
Thank you.
And the other way to go about this, if we're not quite ready to just jump in, and I do have a model ordinance.
Yeah. Here's my question. First, who administers the training?
Adapt.
Okay, and is there a charge for this?
No, it's free.
Okay, and so we make it a requirement of whom?
Of the retail consumption establishments.
Okay, so that means the license holder. So let's take a location we just had O'Reilly's. Okay, so who at O'Reilly's would be required? The proprietor?
Right, would be required to certify that he has undergone, he and his staff or she.
Now we're talking about something. Now we're talking about the staff. So I mean, if there's 8 bartenders, do 8 bartenders have to take the class?
Correct.
But they don't have to go.
All at the same time.
Well, as I understood you say, the owner could go to this training, come back and train.
Correct.
His or her bartenders. So there has to be a certification that all the people who work there had attended a training.
Right.
Once the proprietor.
Or someone designated.
Someone by the proprietor takes it, then anybody else, and then we would want a record of that to be given back to us. And as new people are hired, then they would have to administer that.
Right. And we would only require it every 2 years maybe, so that an annual thing would be a bit burdensome, I believe.
If you were going to do it, June would be the time. Okay.
Right, because June is when we certify.
Right.
Right.
I just want to be clear. So your proposal is to have the license holder go through the training and then train the staff, not for all the staff to go through training?
In the ideal situation, everyone present would be great, but for some establishments that may not be possible. But Adapt is willing to come and do the training as many times as necessary for free.
And let me just ask
Let
me ask a stupid question. Who certifies Adapt?
The New Jersey Licensing, Beverage Licensing Association. They are certified professors or trainers in this area. So, I mean, look, the other way we can go about this is we can try a pilot program and sort of like do the homework on the ground and just go out and encourage people to go to a training and see that it's actually not a bad thing, and then move towards it becoming a requirement. Or we can just require it.
So we have 8 consumption licenses, 7 actually, because 1 we hold. So we could send a letter to these 7 with a description of what we're proposed to do. And why don't we invite some feedback?
Right.
And then what we can do is make it a condition in June for renewal if we want to move ahead.
Right.
And give them X amount of time to complete this. Maybe the first year we give them 1 year.
Right.
So when they come back in June of 2020, they will have reported to us how many of their employees have gone through the training.
Sure.
But we could start now by just sending a letter from Ms. Fritzen saying, and maybe a brochure, whatever we have, saying, we're thinking of implementing this. Would you like to give us some feedback?
Sure. And also to any local caterers that we have. I think.
Well, we got C licenses. I mean, we got the
Retail.
well, we got a club license. So we have the
One.
golf club.
One.
No. Golf club's
Golf club
a
is
full license.
consumption.
Right,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's the
So
little
it's
club.
Just the,
Mr.
Just the little club.
Just a little club? Okay, so the other thing you might find with the letter is that you may find that the liquor liability carriers, okay, insurance companies, for these licensees may be requiring this already. It is conceivable that if I were a proprietor, I wouldn't just put someone behind the bar without giving them some training, so.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's certainly part of this in terms of an incentive. And I'm still in communication with the Division of Consumer Affairs to confirm these details. I cannot confirm this information yet, but some insurance carriers are providing discounts if their clients do this. But again, I cannot confirm exactly who and if that's the case just yet. So we'll start with the letter approach and see how we go. How do we deal with I think offering this to the caterers that we have that do, who serve beer and alcohol at different events is also probably a good idea.
So you mean like rent party and things like that? Well, we would know that because they all get special affairs permits. So we can take a look at that and look at the inventory of, there'll be Maple Woodstock, the Elks.
Right.
We can take a look at that and include them in a letter.
Okay, terrific.
But this is not for any liquor stores, correct?
No.
Just for.
It's just for people who consume the liquor on location.
Consumption only, yeah.
Okay.
And I'll follow up with you tomorrow about this. Thank you.
Okay, next up, speaking of liquor, the exception for 106 Burnett. Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mayor. In planning the events for Women's History Month in March, we're holding an event on March 30th, Saturday. It's not sure if the name is going to remain, but it's Women's Intellectual Salon. It's basically dealing with issues and roundtable discussions and all that. Since this would be the last event that the organizers are putting on for Women's History Month, that is ours, they wanted to do a small reception after the event goes from 30 to 5 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock would be cheese and wine served there, and that's literally for an hour. Hoping for host each other and.
I'm all for it. I do have a question, though. And that is, and this may be a question for either Ms. Fritzen or Mr. Desiderio, which is, sort of what is the extent of our authority to grant exceptions like this? Are we limited in terms of where we can do it, how often we can do it? And that this is just out of sort of curiosity, and assuming we can do it here, I'm all for it, but I'm sort of curious to know under what circumstances we can or can't do it.
Well, you have an ordinance that was passed that says it's only supposed to be allowed in the Bergdorf Cultural Center, 1978 Springfield Avenue, Maplewood Memorial Library, Baker Street. It seems to me it's being violated now with regard to the Woodland.
Well, that's because I think we published it before we got the Woodland.
No, I understand. I understand.
Well, you know what?
We also published it before we got.
Yes, there may be an ordinance dealing with the Woodland that talks about liquor being served.
All right, I did not. It may very well.
Talks about fees for liquor.
Yeah, but this should be
No,
amended.
it has to be amended. It has to be amended.
Well,
technically speaking, you should not. You should amend the ordinance is what you should do.
I absolutely think we should amend the ordinance and to include the Woodland and 106 and anything else that's missing.
Yeah, no, I mean, let me just.
well, with permission.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
No, listen, you don't want every time someone's giving out liquor at one of these buildings that they have to come to a township committee meeting.
No.
This is a special thing like the Woodland. I'm sorry, like Maple Woodstock. We grant them an exception to sell liquor in the park. This is a giveaway.
This is a giveaway.
This is not a sell.
Oh.
Right, but
probably
this is a
not.
giveaway. It's a giveaway.
And it's also, just FYI, we tried to get the Bergdorf and this schedule just wouldn't work for.
But I don't think that we want to make our parks and our public spaces where you have kids in there all the time liquor, because then anytime someone rents it, they're allowed to have liquor there.
No, I agree with that, so which is why I'm wondering.
Don't we also give out about like 20-something, 23 stands in
club license
at the Woodland for social affairs?
That's to sell.
That's selling liquor.
That's selling.
This is giving away, right?
So, for
Right, no, I
example-
understand,
Yeah,
but I'm
it's just a
saying
little
with the Woodland,
financial
something would have changed.
But if someone has a reception there at the Woodland, they're entitled to give wine and beer there for free, as long as they're not charging.
Weddings,
Yeah.
free.
Or if we have an event and you can do wine and beer, like the Chamber of Commerce that has an event there and they do a little wine and beer.
Right. Didn't we do something like this for the library a few years back?
The library is a permitted site.
You know, I understand that, but didn't the township committee
Correct.
take a vote like this?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm just.
And I just say about the reason, excuse me for just.
Absolutely.
The reason was we couldn't get it passed, with the exception of, remember the votes for the Maple Woodstock was 3-2?
Yes.
So we had to negotiate, so at the library, because it's primarily kid-focused, it can only be done when the library doesn't have any children there, and it has to be approved by us.
Mhm.
So that's the big thing, is to separate the liquor from the kids. And that's why we didn't do the community center at DeHart. We don't do any parks.
106 is a senior center, though.
Right, but it also is used as a sort of a spillover sometimes for the community center. Once you give a blanket approval, you will see people come here wanting to have all kinds of events with liquor, and I don't think we want that.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying we give blanket approval. I'm wondering, for these sort of exceptions, putting aside the blanket approval, for these exceptions, what are our, whether it's easier to say, what are our restrictions or what are our abilities?
You are the governing
body.
You are the governing body.
We're the governing body, we're the ABC. We can say what we want to do.
Ms. Adams should make a motion.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay, well, if that's all there is, I thought it was harder than that.
Well, it could be, but we
I'd
don't have
make
to
a
make it.
motion that we
don't have to
allow
make-
wine and cheese.
Give us the date.
March 30th.
March 30th.
I second.
Specifically for this one-time March 30th Women History event. It's been moved and seconded.
And if we want.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lindberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mayor, if I may, Ms. Fritzen, can we get, as a follow-up to this, sort of what Mr. Desiderio referred to, where currently it's permitted?
We have the ordinance.
Okay.
Send
Yeah.
us the ordinance.
Okay, great.
But we do have to add the Woodland. We have to add the Woodland,
So
yeah. We
while
have
we're
to,
doing that, we may as well look at it.
I think we had, okay,
No,
go ahead. And make an argument why a place should be it. I mean, I think
I'm
that's
not,
what we
I
have
don't
to
want to
do.
have a discussion now. I'm just saying,
Okay, I
I
just
want
want
to
to
look at
know.
it.
Yeah.
No, I
wanna
understand
see
what
the-
you want, but we should add the Woodland, we should change the ordinance to add the Woodland. But let's hold it off, because if people want to discuss it, we don't have to change it twice. I know you can.
Our first discussion item.
All right, let's go. Community Board on Police, Mr. Daffis.
Okay, not alcohol related. Community Board on Police. So this relates to membership and board composition. At the board's last meeting, they made a couple recommendations concerning the board's composition. They're recommending that we certainly interview as soon as possible to fill the current opening for adult voting member that exists, and to also possibly entertain the idea of expanding the board to an additional member that would bring us from 6 current adult voting members to 7. And considering also taking the youth membership, which is currently ages 16 to 21, and converting that to 14 to 16, and the youth member being an annual rotating membership, non-voting, and appointed by the school district. Let's start there first. I have an additional part, but let's start our conversation there.
Okay, couple questions. How many months has the board been meeting in existence so far?
I don't remember exactly when we started, but we've had, I want to say, about 5 meetings already.
I think 4.
4 or 5.
No, at best. Yeah, so I think it's 4.
So,
In November was the first. It's about.
Yeah.
So based off of 4 months or 5 months or 4 meetings, 5 meetings, the board already feels strongly they need to add to their governing body at this point?
They do.
Okay, and what is the rationale behind the need for the extra human capital?
The rationale for the additional member is to get us from an even number to an odd number.
Okay.
To increase diversity on the board and have a board that is better representative of the community it's serving, and a balanced board as well in terms of backgrounds and professional backgrounds. Yeah.
Okay. And then for the youth, going from 16 to 14, so that's basically a junior in high school to a freshman in high school. And
or we could do 14 to 18. I mean, we can consider that too. The idea here being that currently the youth member, despite trying,
yes.
I know I certainly have on my own, doing significant outreach to find an older youth non-voting member, which is what we have right now, has been unsuccessful. And maybe the best way to get youth buy-in on this board is to go at the middle school and early high school level, and reach into, have the school district send us people to consider on an annual rotating.
So knowing that we have a great youth advisory, and I see Bernadette here in the audience, and having a 13-year-old, almost a 13-and-a-half-year-old, almost freshman, thinking about her and thinking about when you talk about 14-year-old on this board, I have strong reservations about going that young.
Well, we don't have to go that young.
I would be against that. I would say 16 would be the bare minimum with the type of material that this board will be exposed to. That would be my on age. In terms of the resource, I'd be willing to work with the school board to find a youth, but we would have final approval on their recommendation.
Sure. I mean, they wouldn't have to necessarily, but they would just send us people on an annual basis.
Yeah, no,
for
I
us to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the charter still requires that we interview everyone.
Okay, I'm cool with
that. That wouldn't change. So how does everybody else?
Well, we didn't interview for the youth member. Well, there's no youth member, right?
There isn't a youth member. We haven't got.
So what I hear is the proposal is 7 voting members and 1 youth member, and keeping the same age. What's the ages now?
The age now is 16 to 21.
And are you changing that? Mr. McGee is saying 14, 15 are too young.
Yes,
So-
I'm saying
Right,
it's
that's
too
what
young.
you're saying.
Yes, I am.
So are you,
The board has asked us to consider a younger age. Again, the reason for that being that, not to go back to July 5th, 2016, but the youth affected were younger, and we want to have a voice at the table that is representative of the community that's been affected historically by improper policing.
Yeah, and I think we can find a 16 and 17-year-old that can do that. I think if we work with the Board of Ed as you've provided as a opportunity, I'd like to go that route first before we lower the bar. No pun intended in terms of age.
Sure. So we'll keep it at the same age?
Yes, and then reach out to the Board of Ed. We have our joint towns meeting coming up soon with the Board of Ed. Maybe
Mid-March, I think.
Mid-March, we can tee this up.
Right.
That way, they can proactively help us reach out to the 2,000 high school students, and and we can go from there.
What about a liaison from the Youth Advisory Committee being, or Youth Advisory Committee being?
That may be a lot to ask of a
Yeah,
high
no,
school
I'm
student.
just throwing it out there.
Yep.
Literally just, yeah. Tell me about it.
So we'll keep the age. Is everyone okay with the 1 year member, serving for a year and rotating that seat so that we have
Yes.
a different person every year?
If I may just, what's the rationale for that? Rotating a person off after, it seems to me they just get the information and you're rotating them off.
It's an opportunity to have more youth at the table.
I think we should try it. Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah.
You know what we can do? We can make it a 12-month, so if they get appointed in a mid-year or something, it can go, because otherwise, if you use a calendar year, you may hurt a full 12 months. So you can do it 12 months. Okay, so what I hear is 7 voting members, 1 youth member, ages 16 to 21, appointed by the Township Committee upon recommendation by the school district, and the term for the youth member would be 12 months from the date of appointment.
Yep.
So you'll change the ordinance?
No, and the 7th member will be a member at large from the community.
Yes. Same as everyone else. Everyone okay with that?
I'm fine with that, and we can still try to source youth that are non-school board related to the board. Right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, ultimately, it's our decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Did you have another point on this? Or
Come
not?
again?
Did you have another point on this?
I do, and that just relates to starting our interviews. Fortunately,
Yes.
after a lot of outreach, we did get a nice pool of applicants, new applicants, and we need to schedule those interviews and also decide about interviewing, or at least inviting those who were previously considered, see if they're interested in being reconsidered, with or without interviews again.
I thought we were not going to interview them. We decided last meeting we were not going to do a second interview until we interviewed everyone first.
We're going to interview everyone first, and then seeing no one, we will go into that pool. Right.
So it's just a matter of timing, right? We have to schedule it.
Right.
I can work with you on figuring out a schedule.
Certainly. That's all I've got.
Okay, so Mr. Desiderio, you'll put that on for next meeting? Yes. You're not going to sit on this one, right? No. The treasure hunt.
Treasure hunt, very quickly here. South Orange is a very popular, South Orange, the home of the Seton Hall Pirates, arg, does a very popular treasure hunt
Go Nova. Oh, sorry.
each year, and they've reached out to us to consider having a Soma one this year. And what they've asked me to consider is whether or not the governing body is okay with waiving yard sale permit fees for any households that may end up participating in the treasure hunt, which is currently tentatively scheduled for May 18th. I know we've done that before, but I thought just for being official and proper, I'd bring it to the entire body.
Ms. Fritzen?
We have done it before for neighborhoods, neighborhood associations. We've waived the fee, for example, for College Hill.
Hilton?
Hilton. So I suggested that Mr. Daffis bring it up here at the meeting as well. It's been done.
So you want to make a motion?
I move that we waive yard sale permit fees for any Maplewood households that may participate in the Soma Treasure Hunt 2019 on May 18th.
Second.
One question, so would they still have to register with the clerk's office? They just wouldn't pay the fee?
I believe that.
I was going to have to work out the logistics.
Right.
With
The answer
the
is
organizers.
they should register.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want it to be the
The
May
way we've
18th
done
is
it in
sort
the
of a
past is they have
Yeah.
registered. We've known every address that's participated.
Usually the organizer provides a list of addresses.
Right.
That's what should happen.
Correct.
Okay. Good.
All right.
And just to complete this.
Call the roll on that.
Oh, right.
Mr. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
I was just going to mention that 5% of proceeds of this will go to Mend. So it's also for a good, it's a good cause.
In Maplewood, it'll be called MAPSO Treasure Hunt, right?
Have two different logos, yes.
All right, safe rides.
Yes.
Safe rides.
Safe rides, safe rides. So I'm going to welcome, if I may, Mayor, our chair of our Youth Advisory Committee, whose program and project this is, Ms. Bernadette Clausen, up to the podium to talk about what Safe Rides is.
You want me to describe Safe Rides?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Tell us why we should do this.
Okay, so Safe Rides was started by Jonah Hill at Columbia, and it's used in many different high schools and universities across the nation. But basically, it's a program by students for students, and currently, as it's run / it hasn't gotten started this year by the two seniors that were supposed to start the program again this year, where two students, there's the driver with a valid driver's license, obviously, and a navigator, so the driver is not using the navigation, and a phone number of the navigator is sent out to people that weekend or night on social media usually, and therefore, if you are in the situation where you need a ride, either home or, I'm pretty sure it's home, that you can get a free ride from a colleague safely. So what we ran into is that this system is obviously flawed. It's kind of archaic in the way of communication, and that Uber and Lyft and other rideshare companies have taken sort of the front seat of student preference than rather to engage in the Safe Ride program again. So also, it's become really bad with Uber and Lyft. For instance, Uber has about 1,200 safety cases related to sexual misconduct and general safety between the driver and the passenger a week. And that number has overwhelmed Uber investigators to the point where their investigations don't get taken seriously, as well as the investigators are not, highly trained people who can deal with this kind of trauma that, ensues with some of these cases, especially with sexual misconduct. And we had a case on homecoming, which was October 13th, within the school district. One of the students was had a sexual misconduct with a Lyft driver, which is very alarming because I myself took a Uber to homecoming. So our idea as YAC was to institute a program through an application like Uber or Lyft to make it more appealing to high schoolers to use, and also include the sort of volunteer aspect as well. So we're looking to make an application for the phone to successfully create a more modern version of this program that can also just be utilized more accessibly by students.
Right, so just to complete some of the details, so this is essentially a peer-to-peer Uber or Lyft.
Yes.
It's students helping other students get home safely after parties on the weekends, Friday and Saturday nights. 2 drivers per passenger, 2 drivers at the front of the car, passenger in the back of the car for accountability.
Not driver, 1 driver, 1 navigator.
1 driver, 1 navigator, thank you. And the app will substitute the previous archaic, as Ms. Clausen mentioned, dispatch system, which really didn't work out.
Which also includes safety and transparency between who's driving
Right.
and who's navigating.
Right, and all the trips that therefore would be transparent and able to, you can get access to that data. And we're talking about drivers who are 18 years old and drivers who are 17 years old. And we would have to figure out what the liability issues are here, the legal issues.
Legally, by
17-year-olds.
New Jersey law, 17-year-olds are only allowed to drive 1 person that's not a family member.
And they only could drive until 11 PM too, right?
Yes, but if you are 18 and have a non-probationary license, then you are allowed to drive with more than one person and past the hour of 11 o'clock.
Right.
So hard to keep.
Has there been any conversation with the police chief as how you're going to vet?
Not yet, because I assumed the jurisdiction of the law of New Jersey would go above that.
No, I understand the laws there, but just to be a driver, are we going to does anybody have to have their fingerprints taken? Are they going to have police checks? Do we want the police to just know who these folks are?
We have not checked in with that. I think our first step was getting legal ramifications be checked out by Mr. Desario, because we, wanted to, since it would be sponsored by the town in general and sponsored by the Youth Advisory Committee, we want to clear that first, I think.
Makes sense.
Mr. Desario?
Yeah, I mean, I gladly, I think we should discuss it. Maybe we could set up a meeting with the chief. And I think we really should talk to our insurance consultant as well, because we just have to be cautious about it. Conceptually, it seems like it's a great idea. So that would be my suggestion, okay?
Okay.
I'll set that meeting up
You
for
can
us.
set that up, and then we can meet here or at the police station.
Okay.
Okay, whatever is easier for you.
And then the second thing we were looking for was a monetary we need money for the app.
There you go.
Yeah.
How much you talking?
Yeah, I have an app developer that said the first generation of the app could be created for $5,000, and have that developer willing to do that for us.
So there could be sponsors, right? You could have this sponsored by, so we could raise some of that money. And maybe it's a public-private partnership, and we put up some money and we get some sponsors. There might be architects around who would want to sponsor this. You never know. Or realtors or somebody, so we could have a list of sponsors. And so we have a budget meeting Saturday, so we can take a look at that. And we do have a line for boards and committees.
Yep.
So we might want to bump it up a little bit, and this is a place that we can use some of that and see if we can get some people. I would see a number of sponsors jumping on this. It's a good public relations piece.
I think it was also just, generally thought of by my other members of the Youth Advisory Committee that if we sent out a, crowdsourced funding program like GoFundMe, that, even if every family at Columbia High School donated $2, we'd have most of it there,
Right.
so.
Okay. So we're going to set up a meeting. We'll talk about it at budget time, and we'll go from there. Okay.
And let's congratulate Ms. Clausen, who is going to be leaving us when she graduates this summer, and she's going to American University.
Where's she going? Oh.
Congratulations. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Clausen. Thank you.
Maybe you'll have a ride share down there.
Where is that, in Washington?
DC.
So there's a lot of the president's hats you could buy there. Lots of flags and mugs.
Okay, we're going to move on. Next up is the Finance Department reorganization. Ms. Viveros.
Thank you, Mayor. For anyone who's received the packet from the CFO, basically since December, we've had a vacancy in the office, and that vacancy was for the position of accountant. Currently, where the table of organization stands, we have the CFO. With the new reorganization, I branched in the tax assessor's office, but within the CFO is also our tax collector, treasurer by ordinance. However, we have a shared service with South Orange for tax collection services, but hopefully by the end of the year, with our CFO taking classes, that will go away. But in the meantime, with all that happening, And with the new position and with the vacancy, we thought that restructuring and talk about some succession planning within the department, we think that this plan would be the best next step. There would be obviously a monetary savings, but just to go over exactly what the department is and what it would be. As it stands, we have the CFO, the tax collector, senior cashier, and cashier. Then we have a part-time tax assessor, full-time deputy tax assessor, and then we have an assistant CFO, a payroll supervisor, accountant. With the new changes, there would be the CFO, tax collector, who's also would be the tax collector. The deputy tax collector would be the new position, and then we'd have a cashier. The cashier would be the new level entry position that's being proposed here. If anyone's confused or not following, just.
Yeah. So essentially, you want to get rid of the accountant and hire a cashier.
Correct.
It was saving
As a level
$11,000.
Yeah. So I was just trying to go over the law.
And that's why we read this. We have
Oh,
to-
I didn't know if you did. So
Well, you know what? If you snooze, you lose. So you want to replace the accountant with a cashier. You want us to give you the go-ahead because we could save $11,000 this year and more next year.
Correct.
Okay, I have a question. Ms. Veros, do you and Mr. Kaloje both agree this is a good idea?
Oh, absolutely. We've been talking about it for, since he started, so.
Okay.
It's not anything new.
And your memo was very thorough.
Yes.
It
Can we-
has my support.
All right, can we should move that we approve of this for purposes of, because Mr. Kaloje made it very clear, he's got to hire someone. So it's either going to be under the old rules as the accountant or under the new position as cashier.
As the cashier, we would move to do the cashier, and then what we would do by ordinance, modify that and create the other two positions.
All right, we need a motion to create the position of cashier in the finance office.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we create the position of cashier in the finance office.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, updating the welcoming resolution, Mr. Limbrick?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think I can be brief on this, and just that late in 2018, the Attorney General issued some new guidance which replaced some 2007 Attorney General guidance with respect to dealing with immigration issues for state, county, and local law enforcement. And what I would like to do, what I asked Chief Duvall to do and what he has provided a draft to us for considering, what I would now like to do with our ordinance is to update, our resolution, the Welcoming Community Resolution, and then also the Maplewood Police Department Operational Order to be consistent with what is known as the Immigrant Trust Directive, which is Attorney General Directive 2018-6, which provides that New Jersey's law enforcement officers, it restricts what they can do with respect to asking about or searching anyone or detaining individuals based on immigration status, to checking immigration status, to participating in civil immigration enforcement operations, to providing federal immigration authorities with access to state or local law enforcement resources, and also prohibits any law enforcement in New Jersey from entering into 287 agreements with immigrations and customs enforcement. And this is something that I can work with Ms. Desiderio to get updated, but just wanted to discuss that here. I think it's an update that we should make and that we probably have to make, given that the Attorney General directive that we referred to and took some language from in 2007 has now been superseded by 2018-6. Yep. Everyone in agreement?
Yep.
Okay, I will work with Mr. Desiderio and we'll try to get something on for next month.
Yeah, I printed out what the chief did, the operational order, and it suggested there was a resolution attached, but I didn't get that resolution, so yes, we'll work on that.
Okay, yeah, and I'll make sure I have it. Maybe the chief sent it to me and maybe I forwarded what I forwarded and didn't forward the other thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And this resolution, I mean, this ordinance, this Attorney General order is much better than the previous one.
Yes.
It's much better, and it's much clearer, and it gets rid of some of those ambiguous positions that we'd have to take and stuff, so. I do want to go back to the Finance Department, because in addition to creating the position of cashier, he's asking us to change the title of the senior cashier to deputy tax collector.
Correct.
So we should do that too by motion, right?
Yes.
Want to do that now, or you want to do that when we do the
No, I'm going to do
ordinance
when we do
change?
the ordinance,
Okay,
yes.
so you don't need that to be done now?
No.
Okay. Can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of the 3 items on the consent agenda.
Second.
This has to be the smallest consent
I know,
agenda
right?
we've ever had.
Good one.
You must not be doing anything.
But there's a lot of bills in number one.
We must not be
Try
doing
not to
anything.
spend as much money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded on consent agenda. Please call the roll.
Adams? Yes. Stafford?
Yes.
Schlenberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We're at our second public comment period. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee? Oh, I don't know, you were here before. Just
Do I
your
need, yeah, I
name
need
and
to say my
address.
name. Bernadette Clausen, 421 Elmwood Avenue. So just a comment on the Community Board on Police. I do think that it's open to younger ages, just considering some of the youth advisory committee members are like below the age of 15 and 14. And they're doing a great job. And then the second is that I do agree that a youth advisory committee should be a liaison on this board. And it should not be me because I won't be here for a full year. And neither is Dylan. But then otherwise, I think it would be good to set up a similar situation on how people applied to be on the youth advisory committee. To encourage students like that to do like a Google poll sort of situation, to encourage them to be part of the board for selecting the youth members, the non-voting members. And then for Safe Rides, the only other thing I was going to include is if we could include the South Orange Police Chief on that, since it would probably be drivers from the SOMSD school district that might be residents of South Orange.
What year do you want to start this?
As soon as possible.
I just think it's hard to do, and
Yes.
it's doubly hard when you try to do it with both
Yeah,
towns, so.
And then we got to get the South Orange
Yeah,
Township
so
attorney
I-
involved.
Triply hard.
I think it's fine to do it, but you may find that one town is ready to move faster than another.
Right. For
And
instance,
so
South
don't get
Orange
hung
doesn't
up.
have a youth advisory committee, and we've suggested it to them, so.
Don't get hung up on wanting to, make it perfect with both towns if we can get it.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want like it to be open to those students as well, and for them to like safely be able to do the program.
We can call it MAPSO Safe Rides.
Okay,
Yeah.
but like, would they be able to drive students if they were a South Orange resident?
Well,
I think
since
so.
the
Of
school
course.
is
Yeah.
in Maplewood,
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, we share a school district,
We
so
share a
of
school
course.
district, but the school itself is physically in
I
Maplewood.
think we'll have to get some guidance from our insurance people, because it is one thing if
Yes.
we're picking people up at our school, or if we're picking up at Psalms, that's in a different area, so
think
those
it
are
would
kinds
just be
of,
cut off
those are
towards
good
Columbia High School.
questions. Yeah, those are good questions to bring up with the folks you meet with.
Okay, thank you.
Here. Anyone else?
Marion Cutler, live in South Orange. Thank you again for tolerating me coming back. I dare say you're going to probably see me a lot. I want to talk to you again as follow-up about the athletic fields. Just as background, I came here 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago, having heard the conversation that was going on about the athletic fields and not hearing it. I was hearing it participate or listening on the way on the train. And one of the points after listening to the field consultant, one of the possible solutions that was floated around was this idea of closing the field, keeping the fields closed longer because of turf blankets that were on the fields. And then the possibility of actually reducing maybe 10%, and then possibly even for fall of 19, closing them earlier. And one of the things I said is when I was here, I said, you know, I would walk anyone along the fields because I walk them every weekend during soccer season. I am part of Cougar Soccer. I'm the travel director for Cougar Soccer. So I really took that to heart when I left here because I wanted to know, what did the state of our fields look like? So yesterday, day off from school, I took my 2 kids and I walked every single recreation field that we have in our 2 towns, every one of them. We have, and I want to give you some context because I think this idea of tapering our fields doesn't match up to the reality. We have 11 basic fields between our 2 towns. Borden, Chisowitz, Ritzer, Underhill, Floods, Baird, Maple Crest, DeHart, Memorial, New Waterlands, Cameron. It's 11 basic fields. As of right now, and again, I walked them yesterday, only Cameron should be considered totally offline because of the turf field, the turf blankets that are on there. There are 7 fields that have no turf blankets on them. Borden, Chisowitz, Ritzer, Underhill, granted Underhill is a turf, so you'd never put it there, but I want to put it on here. Floods, Baird, Maple Crest. There are no turf blankets. So this idea of saying that all athletic activities should be tapered or held until mid-April doesn't actually align. So any idea about regrowing grass, it's just not there. So I think the solution, and I know it was a recommendation, not a solution, this recommendation doesn't actually align to our reality. So I want to really challenge that we think about that. Maybe we don't have all of our fields go on, all of our kids playing at the level they want to be right away, or that the clubs want them to be, but having no one on the fields until April 15th or beyond actually doesn't align. So I really want you guys to know I've walked them.
That's not the recommendation we're going to be receiving tonight.
I'm so sorry?
That is not the recommendation we are going to be receiving tonight.
Oh, then that's awesome.
So maybe what you ought to do, maybe we can get to that.
I'm sorry, what's on the agenda?
No, it's going to be in the administrator's report. And you will be able to come up after you hear the recommendation so that you don't have to argue for something you don't know because you don't know it.
I hope I was only advocating and not arguing, but I'll be back.
Whatever. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We are going to move to administrative reports. Ms. Viveros, would you give us the field report first?
Yes.
So maybe if you'd like, I'll just run down exactly what the recommendations were at post 2 weeks ago. This was given by Melissa Mancuso, our Director of Community Services, and these were also in conjunction with the recommendations by the presenter that was here 2 weeks ago. The field opening date, her recommendation, and from the professional, April 1st, with the exception of Memorial Park South on April 15th. Field closure date, mid-November, depending on weather. Secondly, fertilizer and other applications as recommended by consultant on athletic fields only. That would be Borden Field, Maple Crest Park, Memorial Park. Slit seating, aeration, top dressing, only athletic fields areas again. That would be Borden Field, Maple Crest Park, Memorial Park. The turf blankets, as they currently are at Memorial, they would be removed on April 15th, again, removal of DeHart on April 1st. The turf blankets for 2019 under the county co-op, Somerset County Co-op, the first application would be early April, early May, depending on weather, materials, and application. So the recommendations given here on exactly what type of application would be given per square footage, if you will. The second application, June, depending on weather, materials, and application rates. Again, the third application would be late July, mid-August, depending on weather. And the fourth application, early October, early November, depending on weather. So if you have any questions regarding the material, but those are basically all the recommendations from the professional.
So when the applications are made, does the field need to be closed after that? Doesn't say this.
It doesn't say, so I'd have to.
It'll be liquid or dry depending on weather conditions.
Okay.
And they're compliant with New Jersey's fertilizer law and DEP regulations.
And then post-emergent control will be applied as needed basis, the weed control part of it.
So can we, for the public, you talk about Memorial Park South, but as Ms. Culler talked about was the field that she just walked, can we put like a nice little matrix diagram and say, here's the field that will be closed, and here are the other 10 fields that will not be? So it's very crystal clear.
But we don't know about the South Orange. This is just Maplewood.
This is just Maplewood.
So this is our field,
So
but that's fine. I'm
Yeah,
fine
so
with that.
every field in Maplewood will be available as of April 1, except for the 4 fields in Maplewood Park South.
I understand, but I want us to physically list these names
Yeah,
as
we'll do
fields.
that.
I want to be more detailed, okay?
I like that approach.
Yeah, instead of just the actual.
So just for clarity, Borden Park will be open April 1st. Ehart Park will be open April 1st.
Maple Crest.
Maple Crest will be open April 1st. And Memorial, the south field will be April 15th, where the turf blanket is now. The north field will be open on April 1st. That's the proposal.
Right.
Would you like to come up and make any comments now? Is that, okay, was that along the lines you were going to recommend? Okay. All right.
And then I one more thing. So with the closure date, mid-November, depending on weather, that's the earliest the field closure date?
Well, I think that's when they start doing the aerating and they do the reseeding, so that's.
I just want us to be
thought of
crystal
it.
clear for our residents what we're talking about. We say,
Closing.
whether- yeah, is it early November, mid-November, or late November? So that there's no, speculation here.
It says depending on weather. So.
Right.
So the weather's great, it's mid-November. Is that what we're saying?
Well, it also has to do with, when we say depending on weather, it also has to do with how many rainouts and stuff we have in the fall.
That's
So
what I'm
such
saying.
the
Where's
season
the,
has to.
what, does it extend or is it truncated? Where's the variance? So we're saying mid-November in a perfect world, but rainouts in season could extend it, so it could be late November or otherwise. So is it mid-November at the earliest?
Or is it mid-November at the latest?
Correct.
That's a fair question, but I think we can probably
I think we
clarify
can clarify
that.
that.
I just want that 100% ironclad.
I want it clarified too, and I wouldn't want to just keep extending it because of rainouts. I played sports, sometimes the games got canceled, you had uneven records. But, for the program to proceed the way this guy's telling us it should be, when he made his report to us at that committee meeting and when he made his report here, that as it gets later, and it gets pushed later into the spring, so can't have it both ways.
Right,
Can't
so you want to
extend
do
it.
something at the beginning.
So you know what, we have, I think Mr. McGee's absolutely right. We need something that's clear, that has, this is the park, this is the opening date, this is the closing date. We just need to nail down that closing date, what that means. I think what we need to agree tonight is the April 1st opening and the April 15th opening of the South Field.
Right.
And the recommendations on the
Yes.
4 different
And the applications.
applications.
Just a question on the applications now. We do need to, and Ms. Adams probably knows more about this than I do. I know you do. In terms of what we need to approve in terms of a fertilizer or chemical, and whether this is enough information or whether we need more information before we can approve this.
Yeah, I'd personally like to send this to environmental advisory and just get at least their advice on it.
Right. And I guess what I would ask is, that we, whatever questions come from environmental advisory, we get to Mr. Bills, maybe send it to me and I'll talk to Scott as soon as possible. So then we can come back here because the first applications are scheduled for, I think, early April. So, so that way at one of our March meetings, we could give the go-ahead because we don't want to miss that application.
Didn't Mr. Bills indicate in his memorandum what kinds of fertilizers he was recommending?
Yes.
So.
Well, but what Ms. Adams is saying is that she wants to take this to the Environmental Advisory Committee before putting it to us for approval.
I don't know.
I just feel like we're just talking about it too much. And I know what the Environmental Advisory Committee is going to say. They're against any chemicals at all. So, I mean,
No, I-
what's the point of that? Let's just get this done.
Well, because for all I know, they're putting, I have no idea what this means.
Right, but the reason why Ms. Viveros referenced the memorandum from Mr. Billis, is because it refers to those chemicals that he already talks about, that are organic and, non-invasive, only where necessary, weed control, this, that, and the other. What else do we need to know?
I mean, he even redlined in they even redlined in the memorandum that if I'm making the educational guess here that only if needed, it means that they would only act aggressively with some sort of chemical and if needed.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I said at the last meeting that I was in favor of the applications, and I would not be in favor of sending it back to you. And if the Environmental Advisory Committee wants to give us their opinion, I would be helpful to educate us, but I would like to move forward with this. I think the fields need to work, and I don't want to hold it up because we'll end up, this is time sensitive. We have to get on schedules. I think he mentioned that. We have to get on schedule because other parks are scheduling them. This is recommended to us by the group, the right Field Trust. Field Trust. I want to take that recommendation and move forward with it. So I'm prepared to move forward with application group 1 and group 2.
I second that.
Well, clearly the votes are had, but I just want to make the point that I'd like to share this with the Environmental Advisory Committee so that they can at least weigh in. They have a meeting, what day is this? Next Wednesday. Not going to hold anything up for scheduling and if I send it to them ahead of time, just so some of them with their expertise can advise us if there's anything that we don't know about.
I think they've been already doing with the scheduling. I just want to clarify with Nick, correct?
So what does that mean?
So
if they come back and say they're putting this is all Roundup in other words, we're just going to say we have no say over whether or not?
I don't think that's what
I know it's not. I'm just saying, I think it's a wise thing to do to just run it by Environmental Advisory and make sure we know what's getting put on there. It may not change anything we're talking about doing.
Okay, I'm not in favor of that. So I'm in favor of moving forward with, you can certainly be sent to them. I'm not opposed to that, but I just don't want to wait. I want to move forward. I want to give you an indication that the timetable is acceptable to me. I want clarity on the mid-November, what that means. And I'm okay with the 4 applications that they have listed here. And I would move that.
I'd also like clarity on when he's talking about weed control. He's talking about broadleaf weed control when Ian, everybody else you talk about with grasses, that clover is a healthy and strong, sustainable, play-onable growth that is technically a weed, but isn't something you'd want to kill.
I remember him saying on the record that.
Right, that's, I just want to make sure.
And he said,
That's
so
what it says.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the mayor's motion.
Okay. So we can discuss the motion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lundberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Is there anything else, Ms. Viveros?
I do, Mayor. I received some communication from Waste Industries regarding the garbage truck that we'd had this agreement regarding having parked one of their vehicles over at DPW. Mr. Desiderio and I have been working on an agreement. Essentially, it outlines that they're able to park the one garbage truck over at the DPW facility, and that they would agree to keep the area clean. And at any point, if it's not in any agreeable state, that we'd be able to remove the vehicle, have the vehicle removed from there. And as far as any sort of communication, so basically this would cover 3 of our locations instead of paying a monthly fee of $700. And those locations are the police station, the community center at DeHart, and the Bergdorf Center.
Great. We have to do a resolution for that?
Yes.
Is the motion? Okay, can we get a motion to accept this agreement with Waste Industries?
So moved. Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Adams? Yes. Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. Lundberg?
Yes.
Mr. McGehee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
I just had one additional item. I have been talking to New Jersey Transit. I went back to them and spoke to them with regard to the fee and making a request for the $5. They did come back, and I wanted to share this with you before making any sort of final decision or bringing it to their attention. They are not against raising the fee, but did make the recommendation perhaps of raising it to $4 now, once the agreement is up in July. And then the following year, we'd go to the $5. So have it in incremental.
You mean we would move to $5 in July or $5 in July of next year?
Next year, 2020.
Why is that?
They thought in terms of just tactfully in marketing that it would be better for them and just for the
I feel like
commuter.
we-
But of course, it's your,
Yeah, I just feel like we take these baby steps and we ultimately just raise it anyway. It just,
So is it our call or their call to raise the monetary amount?
yeah,
So we approved $5 at the last meeting.
correct,
And that's what you went to them with.
yes.
Is there anyone who wants to change their mind from $5?
I do not. I want to go back and tell them.
I don't either.
Okay, good.
So $5.
Thank you.
I'll write a letter to them. That's what I was just waiting
what's the
for.
point?
Um,
$1 for.
Okay, and then do you want to give an update of our OEM meeting?
Yes. We met this afternoon, the OEM team. Essentially, we're, hopefully the storm will be what it, won't be what it is, or predicted rather. We'll wait. It is going to start late morning. We're thinking between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. and last through the entire day until about 9 p.m. It will then turn into some rain, sleet. Met with DPW. They are ready to go. They've got their equipment already, salt. One thing we are going to be mindful of and will be doing tomorrow is staging a truck over near the school on Valley and Donnell.
2 trucks.
2 trucks. And that will help to sort of have somebody at that side during the early dismissal and ready to go once the accumulation starts. They are going to be doing the pre-salting before this all starts, about an hour before.
Clarify the pre-salting, is that everywhere like it was, not the last time, but this time before that, where it was brine and there was stuff everywhere and there was tons of salt dumped everywhere on the sidewalks, every corner?
We don't brine unless.
No, I'm just asking because
What he said today is he's going to put the machine on a 1 inch or 1.5 inch.
1 1/4.
1 1/4 inch snow, and that'll minimize what comes out of the truck on the first pass. And then as the snow appears, he's going to raise that to 2 inches, and that's for the next pass.
Right. So just a pre-salting method, it's not gonna have so much impact as you're mentioning, where just spreading a whole bunch everywhere.
Crazy.
So they're minimizing that. There's some additional things we've been talking about to sort of help that a little bit.
There are really good reasons to mitigate it, like salt in our drinking water.
Right. And then again, just the temperatures are going to be pretty low, so we're going to have the DeHart open until 10 p.m. Or if we determine that it needs to be open additionally, then we'll make that call. Schools do have an early dismissal, as I mentioned before. We've been in communication with them. They know about our plan and what we've intending on doing. Fire and police are ready to go. They've got all the resources. They should be fully staffed. If there's any other.
Jitneys in the morning, and we'll
Jitneys,
determine,
yes.
Because we don't know what the snow's going to be like at 5 o'clock, we'll determine in the afternoon what to do about the jitneys. Just want to talk about the truck. The time in November 15th, the big problem we had was getting the truck to the other side of town because we couldn't get past Prospect and we couldn't get past
Right, Valley.
So we're gonna put a couple trucks over there salted and put plows ready, to park if we will bring the personnel to the trucks. And if need be, we'll use police vehicles to bring the personnel to the trucks. We don't think it'll be like November 15th, but you know, it's on these kinds of storms, when they start in the mid-afternoon, people get released from work all at the same time.
Right.
It's like a reverse
Right.
rush hour.
Right.
And you have school and you have all the other people doing it. So,
They've already mitigated.
yeah, we're trying to make sure that we at least have our personnel out and ready to go. And the other thing is we won't be sending people on jobs so that they have to race back to DPW. So they'll be around doing work in and around the area there so that they'll be near their vehicles.
Right.
And we have the private haulers, the private plower rather, is on call. If we need them, we'll call them in. If not, we won't call them.
Right.
So we're set.
We'll obviously send any updates
Yes.
as this
Now let's
starts
hope
to
it
start
snows.
Yes. Well, you know, our emergency management is so good that every time we've planned for these, it doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
I think
I'm okay with that too.
the planning has
Right.
worked. So,
Let's keep planning.
all right. Anything else?
That is all I have.
Mr. Desiderio?
I have no report, Mayor.
Ms. Fritzen?
No report. You know, after what you did earlier, I should have 10 things.
Okay. Last time I went this way, Mr. Lambert.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. McGee.
I'm gonna break it.
Oh, man. All right. So really quick, I just wanted to recognize, Maplewood Cares, as we know, with the government shutdown ending, our SNAP program is now funded again, but we are moving forward with Maplewood Cares, which is a program designed to help deserving families in our community. We are working on a couple of prongs in terms of our strategy, and one is putting together ordinance which will be leveraged for how people can donate money or grocery cards to the actual fund and how it will be managed here within the township. So Mr. Desiderio has put together an ordinance which we've looked at over this week, and we will put it into introduction on March 5th. To that vein, I want to recognize the FMBA and PBA for their efforts this weekend, as they've already started as part of Maplewood Cares, a can and cash drive collecting for deserving families, not just in Maplewood and South Orange, but Essex County as well. This weekend, our middle school, Maplewood Middle School, is holding their annual musical. It's The Wizard of Oz. Please come out and support. The arts in our town and towns are phenomenal, and I'm sure it'll be a great show. There are a few tickets available, so please come out and support our youth. That's from crew to stage to the actors and on the actual stage itself. Office hours. Out with the old and in with the new. I received some very sad news this past week when I heard that Real Kachina is closing. So I'll have dinner with the Township Committee member. I'll be there at 5 p.m. on Saturday to have dinner. So please come out and join me. I'm not buying dinner, but I'll break bread with you. So in its last 2 days of existence, I will be there for dinner at 5 p.m. at a Real Kachina in the village. And in with the new, 10:30 on Sunday, I will be at the bread store, sitting there.
Bread stand.
Bread stand, rather. Thank you. Sitting there, ready to have my office hours and enjoy some delicious pastries and coffee. So Saturday, I'm in the village, and Sunday, I'm over on Boynton Avenue. Come out. That's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Don't park on Jacoby. Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mayor, just a couple things. I attended an NJTPA green infrastructure educational session a couple weeks ago. Mr. McGee was also there, as was Tracy Woods from the Green Team, and it was very informative. I then took part in a webinar about the same topic. I don't know when, a couple days later, I think it was. But we're going to be talking about several of the things that came up at our Engineering Public Works meeting tomorrow to see ways where we can deal with stormwater runoff and green infrastructure. None of it, of course, is cheap, but if we can try to incorporate things as we keep it in mind as we proceed with projects and project planning, I think that's an important thing for us to do. Also, as I mentioned to a couple members of the TC, I talked to the TC, there's interest in, we have a requirement for applications before planning or zoning board to be notify properties within 200 feet of where the project takes place. I think it would be a service to the community for projects over, the mayor and I talked about, say, 25 units or 20 units, that it doesn't change the requirement for the applicant, but that our communications team or the administration send out an email blast notifying people when the hearing is. So for basically projects that impact the public on a larger scale maybe than somebody putting a deck or on their house would, which is generally why they require it. So
We should get agreement that that becomes a policy. I think we want to be careful that we don't be held, that's not held against us, but as a general policy, attempt to notify through our email blasts and whatever, any major project before the planning board.
My suggestion is even now you can just send out the agenda via email blast. Is that not
It's got to be a descriptive. You got to say this is what's
yeah,
being
because
proposed.
nobody, it's too legal.
Yeah.
Just an email saying there's,
We can work that out.
yeah, something, just in, if FYI.
We have nothing, at least maybe till April.
I'll add that to the communications meeting we're having this week.
Yeah, that would be good.
And that's all I have, Mayor.
Mr. Daffis?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two quick things. In each case, a clarification. There seems to be some confusion I'd like to clear up. During my office hours last week, I heard from a couple of our seniors who live in apartments, and there's some confusion as to whether or not they're eligible for the Blue Angel lockbox system. They are. They're not necessarily excluded from it. Just call PD, go through the process, and PD will reach out to the landowner or project property management in the apartment complex and see what they can work out. So please don't think that you're excluded from the lockbox voluntary program. The other thing is, earlier today, Ms. Viveros and the township sent out a rental notification, rental registration notice. Deadline is March 1st, is that right? Just want to clear up that seniors are exempted from, seniors who are home sharing or house sharing under our new ordinance that allows them to bring up to 2 boarders into their home, needn't register that or apply, needn't register or pay the fee. So the idea behind our home share was that seniors didn't have to do that. And we just want to clarify that because I've heard from a couple seniors earlier today after they saw that email blast. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of things. One, the Black History Month, we're winding down our programs, but there's a lot of things happening this week and next week. Thursday night at the Hilton Neighborhood Association meeting at 7:30. At the Community Center at DeHart, there's celebrating the writings of African-American poets. Friday night at the Woodland at 7:30, there is the showing of the Central Park 5. It's a screening and a panel discussion. That probably will be packed. There's a play that's occurring Friday through Sunday at the Bergdorf. It's Intimate Apparel. And this is a new group that's coming here. There is also a movie on Saturday at 11 at the library, Great Ancient African Civilizations. And on Thursday the 28th, their African Rhythm Drum Circle at the Hilton branch of the library. And that same night, That will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the drums, I'm sorry, 4:30 to 5:30. And that night at 6:30, Chef Jesse Jones will be doing a talk and a tasting. So you can go to Maplewood, Black History Month, or BHM.com, and you can check all this out. Also, wow, that was a nice ending. We cut a ribbon at Bonji Bowl. They've opened up in town, and also you mentioned the bread stand. Yeah, we do have parking issues there. We're trying not to impact the residents. Anytime we have a business opening in a residential area, there's got to be a balance between customers and the residents. So please look for parking on U Street, Jacoby Street, and Menzel on the south side of Boyden Avenue if you go there. And that is it. Yes. Oh, I have one other thing too for Ms. Fritzen. Let me just get Ms. Fritzen on the plastic bag. When we adopted the ordinance, when we introduced the ordinance last time, we sent a letter to all the stores.
Correct.
Let's do the same thing with the ordinance again, letting
Okay.
them know that.
So you want that going to the grocery stores and the convenience stores as well?
Yes,
Wawa, 7-Elevens, 3.
same ones that we did last time.
Okay.
So the 2 supermarkets in town and all those convenience stores. Ms.
The
Adams?
chili cook-off is Sunday.
Yes, it is.
And since
A lot
we have
going on.
budget hearing on Saturday,
We have budget hearings on Saturday.
I have to
Yeah, I
cook
get that.
chili on Sunday morning.
Oh, you're
I'm
competing?
in it.
Okay.
Good luck.
So we will be meeting here February 23rd, Saturday at 9 a.m. to talk about a budget. The meeting is open. You're more than welcome to join us. Hopefully, we won't be here that long.
Couple hours we're supposed to, right?
I hope a couple hours, so. And with that, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.